Hey folks, we're moving along on the Santa Barbara International Film Festival train. I have the creator of the film The Bitter Pill here today, and I am super, super, super excited. So I have a bunch of questions to ask you. I'm going to start off with one very serious question. So I hope you're ready for this.
I'm
Clay
ready.
is synonymous, apparently, with taking various social media breaks, which I found interesting. We live in a world where all of us are told constantly, you better be on social media, you got to be posting constantly. And here's Clay with another. Yeah, I'm taking another social media break. So I'm curious to ask you as a filmmaker, I mean, do you kind of ever feel like I can just still do this and it doesn't affect you? Because nowadays it really is super important that we're on social media a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a conflict, an internal conflict that I deal with all the time. I want people to be able to follow my work, and I want to be able to have a voice, and I want to be able to truly. I still think social media you can connect with people
Yeah.
and stay in touch and know what's going on in the world. But it's also, the algorithms are built to be attention seeking and attention grabbing, and I myself am susceptible to that and find myself being less present in my own life, whether it's work or at home. And so sometimes I need to take a break and just like unplug from that and, focus on whatever project or focus on family or both in order to sort of continue to lead a happy life as best I can.
Absolutely. I think we all should subscribe to more social media breaks because I'm not good at that either. I probably should learn that. So thank you for that. One of the other things I found so fascinating is I saw a picture of you where you have this system of doing things, and it's just a ton of sticky notes that were all over the place. So I was like, I bet he's a storyboarder, and I bet those
Oh yeah.
sticky notes happen all the time, don't they?
It's actually my favorite part of the process of making a movie because
Okay.
when you are filming something, especially in a documentary, and you're out in the field and you start to bring footage back and your brain is swirling with all of the possibilities of the things that could happen and structural ways to lay out something in a dramatic way to appeal to an audience. Like I love being able to sit down with a stack of index cards with my collaborators and try to come up with what's the pie in the sky, like what's the best version of the story, and let's lay that out. What are our best intentions here, and then figure out if we can make those dreams a reality in the edit. And then things always change, new themes, new ideas always emerge, but that initial sit down at a table and try to figure out what the most ideal version of the story is always fun for me. And then like yeah, it's the most fun part of the whole process.
Absolutely. I concur with that 100%. I know you're originally from Virginia, and I
Yep.
realize that you have now since moved from Virginia. So I imagine that in the heart of you is a true Virginian. So I'm curious how you made that transition and how often you get a chance to reconnect with your true home.
Yeah, I mean, I was born and raised in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I get back there at least a couple times a year. My family and I have three older sisters. They all live there as well. My parents are still in Charlottesville, so um, I think I was very fortunate when I moved to Los Angeles 20 years ago that there was already a community of people from my small town and even from my high school that lived out there. So I moved to LA in a situation where I already knew about five or six people, and those people mostly are still there even today. And so it was a way for me to not feel completely isolated and alone and go to a brand new big city that's very different from Charlottesville and and feel like I had a community and we were all in this together. We were all trying to do film work, whether most of my friends were trying to be either writers or actors. And I fell into documentary work and loved that. So yeah, I feel very grateful that all of those people were out there and gave me a touchstone of home.
Gotcha. Oh, I imagine so. And I've never been to Virginia. I've been offered to have somebody host me, etc. And so one of the exciting parts is that I can eventually get to go visit. On the
Oh,
other hand,
go in October. Go for the
ooh,
leaves.
oh, yes. Now, on the other hand, I am headed to California soon, so I don't want to be remiss in asking this. Obviously, the festival's in California. Clearly, I know that you had posted up, and I want to ask about this. You have a family, couple families actually, that are just really close to you that lost everything in their fires. Are they still doing their GoFundMe account? And also, were you impacted by all of this?
Yeah, so I had like my best friend growing up that I moved out to LA with. He lost his house, and my wife's best friend, she lost her house as well. And my wife and I, we live in Highland Park, which was only a couple miles from the fires, but we had to evacuate because the smoke was just so bad at our
Wow.
house. And it's been hard, frankly. It's been devastating. I probably know kind of lost count. There's like over 20 families I know that lost their house, of people that I know pretty well. And so um, it's just, I think the community of Los Angeles both showed its like connectivity and came together and people were helping each other. But there's also this great sense of like heaviness and loss and grief that everyone is still going through and processing right now.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And I also saw the two GoFundMe's, which I did share because I wanted
Oh,
to.
thanks.
I just keep trying to just share them, share them, share them. I'm coming to California and I'm volunteering. Do you think there's anything at this point? Because I notice how the media shifts very quickly. They were talking about the fires. That was the number one priority. We get a month in, things are more settled. We stop talking. Do you feel
Yeah.
that there's things we should still be doing or things we should still be on top of to help folks there?
Well, I mean, I saw something that was posted just yesterday of like the where a lot of people in that had to evacuate from Altadena and were living in a shelter from Red Cross in Pasadena, that shelter is being closed up because they're running out of funds, or I'm not exactly sure why it's closing, but there's going to be a couple hundred people with nowhere to go, and trying to find out a way to house those people and keep them sheltered, I think is super important. Finding out how to donate to the Red Cross, finding out how to donate to these organizations that are on the ground right now, giving people food and shelter is the number one priority.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Now, before we got on here, I was talking to Clay and I had mentioned to him I tend to get a bit intimidated by super talent. And he's like, why? Let me just tell you why. One fun fact here. You have had work that has been distributed by the likes of HBO, Showtime, and Netflix. That's intimidating alone right there. So I got to ask the $1 million question because I work
Yeah.
in a world where a lot of people I speak to are indie filmmakers. And of course, every single one of them wants to be able to have that same brag right and say, listen, I've got my shows, I've got my films all over the place. Any advice, any go-to, anything that you can say to somebody as a tool or a key to get them going or get them closer to that?
Well, I think for me in my career, what my experience has borne out is persistence is key. When I started in my career, I feel like, not shy about being like pestering people and trying to, not bug people too much, but also not be shy about like, I need work or I have this idea. I really like borrowing a friend's camera and just going out and trying to jumpstart something. So that persistence, I think, really paid off. And also just like my very first movie that I made was about teenage magicians, the first documentary that I directed. And I was documenting people who were trying to figure out who they are and what their voice is as an artist, as a magician. And I was kind of doing the same thing as a filmmaker. I was 27 making this movie. And so I feel like trying to find your voice and who you are and what you care about, if you are really like finding those things and doing those kinds of stories and working on those as your art, I think it's going to come from a more honest place and people are going to feel that in some subconscious way. So try to find the stories that really matter to you or resonate with you. Um, because if you're young and starting out, like start from that place.
No, absolutely. In fact, I was going to ask you a question about the stories that you tell. I've noticed in your repertoire of work, you tend to gravitate towards inspirational, soul-searching kind of films. So, if I were to ask you, what do you as a filmmaker find to be inspirational? Meaning, what do you look for when you say to yourself, "All right, I need a new project." What element has to be there for you to say, "Yeah, I'm jazzed about this. I feel it should be a film."
Yeah, there's several things. I always say I like to find good characters. And by that I mean I like to find characters that are A, themselves good storytellers because that makes my job easier. but B, somebody who isn't afraid to have a like 360-degree portrait of themselves and explore some things that are um, perhaps weaknesses or vulnerabilities um, that go along with parts of their personality that should be celebrated. So that's anything from, Steve Gleason, the movie I made about the football player who had ALS.
Yeah.
He was very vulnerable, and his wife Michelle very vulnerable with the camera. So they had great moments of celebration, but then very low, like seeing how depressing it is to go through that disease. Or Paul Farrell in The Bitter Pill right now. He's a champion for his small town, but also you can see how much it's costing him professionally and personally. And he allowed us to have access to document that as well. So to me, those kinds of character studies ring with more authenticity, and actually make the audience feel more connected to the story than something that is, yeah, a bit of like a rose-colored glasses portrait. So I those are kind of stories I like. I also like to find, if it's an archive thing, I like to find archive that maybe no one has ever seen before.
Okay.
And so I did a series on the Heaven's Gate cult for
Mm-hmm.
HBO Max, and we were able to dig up archive of these seminars that the group held in 1975 that no one had ever seen before. And
Okay.
it just, you could really sit in them and like hear those leaders back in the early days of that group talk in a way that made you be like, oh, they're real humans. They weren't, there was nothing special about them then. They just believed in this kind of wild idea and wanted to tell people about it.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Uh, Part of me wants to ask because, of course, I stalked you because that's what we journalists do. I have to think to myself, I could totally see you bringing both your family and the dogs and being like, these are my two important things that have to be on every set I go to. Any truth to that?
I actually don't bring my family or dogs
Oh,
so much, but I mean, I try to bring them to film festivals when I can. I
sure.
definitely make sure every edit space that I've ever had allows my dogs to be there.
God.
Uh, yes. Uh, so I'm in the post process. Yeah, every space I've ever had has allowed dogs.
Oh, that is
Um,
awesome.
but
I knew it.
uh, and then in my most recent film that I finished but has not come out or premiered anywhere, about Andy Kaufman,
Yeah.
I did put a shot of my daughter in it, but that's the first time I've done it.
Oh, how cool is that? That's
Yeah,
awesome. I like that very much. Now, you, of course, alongside of Shannon Riggs, have founded Parkside Films. She's
yeah.
obviously not here, so tell me a bit about Shannon. And then, second of all, to date thus far, tell me one of the biggest benefits of owning your own production company, because I know everybody gets excited about it, but it's like, yeah, you need results, and there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, it's running your own production company is very gratifying but very difficult. I mean, I love Shannon to death. She's my producing partner. We
Yeah.
met on a movie called Four Christmases back in 2007, the
Okay.
Vince Vaughn and Reese Witherspoon movie.
Yeah.
Yep. And and then we worked on Gleason together. We made a short film together, and we worked on Gleason. She's amazing. She's someone who can both think from a logistical point of view and knows how, anything from an $80 million comedy can needs to run to a $100,000 documentary. And she has done all of that and everything in between, from a producer standpoint. So um, she just has that great flex of knowledge to know when and how to scale up or scale down to fit whatever project, whatever the needs of the project are.
Yeah.
So she has that part of her brain, and then creatively, what I love about her is she's she's the most empathetic person I've ever met. She just like can feel into any person's perspective and point of view in a way that is very valuable, and can fill in some of my own blind spots sometimes.
Oh, very
And
lovely.
yeah.
Oh, how sweet. That's so sweet. Now, before I get on to talking about your movie, I have one more question to ask you. Again, going through your body of work, I found it interesting. I would have pegged you for somebody who specifically did film, but I do know you had a few jaunts in television. So I'm
Yep.
curious, what made you gravitate to TV? Because honestly, I would have never pegged you for that. I would have thought just mostly documentary, all film, no TV. You don't look like that kind of guy.
Like the series that I did, like Innocent Man
Yeah.
and Heaven's Gate. Yeah, I wanted to. I I don't like to do the same thing twice. I like to like one of the people I look up to is like Danny Boyle. I love Fincher, I love Kubrick, but Danny Boyle in the sense of like he doesn't ever seem to do the same story twice, and
Yeah.
he does a really interesting take on whatever that project is. So I wanted to try television. I had never done a true crime show, so um, when Campfire folks approached me that they had the rights to John Grisham's book, his only
Yeah.
nonfiction book, I was like, oh man, that sounds cool and I want to try that. So it's a different muscle though, I will say. TV and like doing a series where you need structurally, I had to shift my brain on how to lay things out because true crime in particular, like you need um, the hook at the end of every episode to make you go the cliffhanger to go to click on the next one and there are certain tropes and rhythms to true crime that are in some ways unavoidable or I found unavoidable in the
Yeah.
sandbox that I was playing in. So it's like storytelling wise structurally different and I enjoyed that challenge. I'll probably do another series at some point in my career but I would say I tend to like features a little better.
There we go. Okay, onto the film. Let's talk about this. I just need to get a drink here. My throat, for some reason, is just killing me. How are we doing so
Yeah,
far?
good. I'm fine. So I hope that's not too loud here in the lobby.
No, it's actually been not bad at all. In fact, and the more I talk to you, the less intimidating you kind of are. Kind of. I mean, kind
That
of. Still
that's
are,
I
but
try to set people at ease.
it's the man right here. Okay. All right. So the film we're talking about today is The Bitter Pill. It was originally released in April 2024. So I have a bunch of different questions. This is 99 minutes long. When I was doing some reading and research, I discovered that it took a total of 7 years to create. Now, I want to talk a bit about it's two full questions. First off, I'd like to know the reasons behind that, if it was just financial or other factors. And then on the other side, please speak to your filmmakers about at what point can they not quit? Because I'm sure after 7 years, most would be like, we're done. As in, we're not even going to go down the road anymore.
Yes. It was a wild process with this film. So um I was can you still see me? Sorry, my
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I gotcha.
phone freaked out. Yeah, it was a wild process. I found the main character, Paul Farrell, through my uncle. They're at the same law firm. My whole family is from Huntington, West Virginia, where
Yeah.
the story takes place and where our main character is from as well. And so I initially thought it was only going to take a couple years to do. And I was able to secure financing from a previous financing backer uh, who had done Gleason with me. And so they were like, all right, you did a good job with that one. We made our money back. So
Yeah.
I was able to get a chunk of change to start filming and making this movie
Yeah.
but I didn't understand the full complexity of the story, the full complexity of the case. And I don't think anybody knew how big it was going to get and how long it was going to take. So,
Yeah.
literally, in following Paul filing his first cases in Huntington, West Virginia, it spun out quickly over the course of the next 12 months. It became the biggest civil litigation in the history of America. And so, with it becoming that big, all of a sudden I was a year and a half in and being like, well, this has become a behemoth. I have no idea how this is going to resolve and when it's going to resolve. And so we had to sort of pause and rethink our production plan of like, well, this might need to go a lot longer. We don't know. Um, because in the beginning, you want to shoot everything. Everything's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Uh, and so as the longer you go, the sort of prism through which you see the story and what you need should hopefully get tighter and tighter.
Yeah.
Um, and so it was it was lots of stops and starts, and we were able to keep our crew very small. Most of the time, it was two or three of us out in the field filming, um, and and that way we like bought our own camera gear again as like Parkside Film. Shannon and I were like, well, as opposed to renting stuff, we'll save more money if we can use some of the financing to like buy our own gear
All right.
and um keep everything compact. And so that's what we did. We followed the story, and we thought we were going to have it done in 3 years, 2 to 3 years. And with following Paul in that very first case that he filed, it ended up taking 6 years to follow the story, and then another almost a year to edit.
Holy man. And I was going to ask you about, of course, how you met the attorney, Paul Farrell Jr., who we're talking about. But now that you've explained that, if I were to ask you, what is it about Paul that you feel makes him an incredibly strong document subject?
Yeah,
Let's try
I
that
mean,
again. Documentary subject. Sorry.
okay, I'll tell you, I'll never forget this. The first time I talked to Paul, I called him on the phone and was asking him about what these cases were that he was potentially filing. And he quoted Sun Tzu's The Art of War and Star Wars within the same sentence. And I like was dying laughing. But
Okay.
also there's a real sense of, gravity and like life or death part of the story as well. So I was like, oh
Yeah.
man, this guy is a good storyteller. Like I said, that I like to look for, and there's perhaps some sort of levity, but some very like he's very brash and brooding and gruff sometimes too.
Yes. He
And
is.
I like stories with a lot of juxtaposition like that. I like people with a lot of juxtaposition. And so he was giving me that off of our very first conversation, and I believed in the potential of the case. I thought it had great merit.
You betcha.
Um,
Gosh. I don't want to get into too much detail, meaning I'm going to skirt around so that people don't get everything that comes in the film because then they may not want to watch it then, obviously. Um, One of the things that you do very, very well is you highlight the obvious and there's a lot of painful truths to this film, but you do it in such an elegant way. Like, for instance, the car with the inject heroin on it. That was one thing. When looking and listening to somebody talking about having 3 to 5 overdoses per shift, or the percentage, the 20% of babies that are born as addicts.
yeah.
One of the documentary filmmakers that I spoke to once said to me, "You almost have to, in a way, desensitize yourself from the subject and your
Hmm.
purpose, because without that, you would not be able to keep it together." Would you concur with that? Meaning, how do you rationalize that going on a set and listening to all this and not breaking down? How do you keep that semblance of calm while you're doing something so very important?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that it's about compartmentalization, and I don't know if that is a good or a bad thing mental health wise. I think that honestly, just as a aside, this is why a lot of documentarians are building like therapy and mental health into their budgets
Oh, yeah.
of their films in
Yeah.
order to sort of try to process the sometimes the tough things that we come across, whether
Yeah.
it's seeing crime scene photos, seeing dead bodies, seeing like I've seen all of these things, and it's like it's intense. So for this it was, um I had the vision to be able I wanted to be able to really engage the audience emotionally and let them see and understand how devastating the crisis was. But I was
Oh,
also trying to make it be like a Michael Clayton legal thriller. Um,
yeah.
and so it was trying to find that balance to give you enough emotion, but really to be like hooked into the suspense, more so than a lot of other documentaries that I think are more focused on the people like the addicts and the emotional trauma like culturally and in the society than I think we did in the Bitter Pill. But to your larger point, like when I made Gleason, I had to. That movie was so intense and the footage was so raw that I shut myself off emotionally for 12 months while I was making it, while I was editing it, and I'll never forget. I that all came crashing down when we were in the sound. We got into Sundance. We were on the soundstage mixing it, and it
Yeah.
was the first time I had been able to sort of like breathe a sigh of relief of like the movie's done. I'm not changing
Yeah.
it anymore. It's just like it is what it is. I'm sitting here. I'm watching. I'm just watching the movie as if I'm an audience member, and I lost it. You know what I mean? Like that
I do.
the so uh you know, I I I think it's a skill that I have, whether it's good or bad for me, to be decided. I don't know, you know?
Just so you guys know while you're listening to this, get that mental health on the set. This is an example right here that it may not be too healthy, and you may want to be able to go home and not freak out your loved ones because you've been this way on set. And then you're like, okay, here I am, sort of thing, because that balance is super, super important. And before getting into other logistics here, I want to ask you, was there ever any apprehension? Because there's been a number of different films, of course, that are done about opioid addiction. Were you
Yeah,
ever concerned about, being labeled or paralleled or kind of thrown in the same like Sackler film and other things like that? Was it important to you to distinguish yourself in general away from these other pieces?
100%. I mean, I think that that's what I found in taking the movie to the marketplace. Just to be totally candid with you, everybody immediately puts it in the box of like, oh, it's an opioid movie.
Mm,
And there's been and every streamer and every place is like, oh, we already had our opioid project, and so we don't really want to do that anymore.
oh gosh.
Um, and I think that's been a challenge for us, and to be able to say like, there are stories, and just like people, stories contain multitudes, and there are lots of different things that you can explore that are perhaps different or in it from a new perspective. So again, that's why I was like, yeah, it is important for me to make that distinction of like this is more of a legal thriller
Yeah.
than many of the other things that I've seen out there and love. There's been so many great projects um, about the opioid crisis. Andy Timmerner had a film. Gibney had Crime of the Century, the
Yep.
two-part series. Like, there's great stuff out there that's been done that it really gets into the nitty gritty of malfeasance of these companies. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. Let's talk about the legality. One of the things that I don't think filmmakers always think about, like especially in your situation, you're at meetings, you're watching councils get together, you're seeing the confidential documents, not physically seeing them, but there's courtrooms where you're going into, the police that you're shooting. So I guess my question to you is, because this was a legal case, were there concerns about filming and what you could and couldn't do from a legal perspective, and how do you deal with that?
absolutely. So it was imperative for us from the jump to, as filmmakers and people, we knew we were going to be in these situations that were going to be very touchy. So
Yeah,
we had to educate ourselves and talk with lawyers, entertainment lawyers, fair use lawyers,
yeah,
and we wanted to be able to protect ourselves and not hurt Paul or the case, or God forbid, we do something that would put the case in jeopardy
yeah.
at the expense of making our movie. So we were very specific with how and what and when we shot in order to not break any of those rules. But it took months of research and conversations in the very early days, right when we started, in order to make sure that we were buttoned up in that way.
Well, not only that, did it impair with the filming schedule? Because I imagine if, Paul's got to go into court, there are certain things that you can't film, and there's certain things processed as far as how far he is into the case. Did that impact anything at all?
Yeah, I mean, we were not allowed in federal court. We petitioned the
Sure.
court to try to put a camera in there, and they rarely ever allow that.
I'm
So it
sure
was difficult to make a movie about this, like the case is the centerpiece of the story, but
it is.
knowing that we would never be able to put a camera inside the courtroom, and we would never be able to see Paul actually do that part of his job to get up and put on the case. And so we had to find a way to highlight what that case would look like for an audience as it's being built rather than having it be put on in the courtroom itself.
Yeah,
Um, and and yeah, knowing that there was going to be times when we had to turn the cameras off and then retrospectively ask what happened rather than be in the moment and film something, because we knew if we filmed it in the moment or we filmed a conversation with Paul talking to his clients directly, that could be that could be problematic. So we were
absolutely.
so we're just very careful, and a lot of that boils down to also trust with film subject and filmmaker, knowing that there's a rhythm that developed and a greater deepening of trust over the years, over the many years, so that you can tell when and how and what to shoot.
You betcha. Now, I haven't had the good fortune of being able to speak to Paul, so I guess I'll ask you these questions because they're movie relative. One of the things that we hear him talk about is being so vacant from his family from 2 years, basically.
Yeah,
Um, do you feel he has come full circle with that? Do you think he's come to a level of acceptance? Because any good hero, anybody that takes on the good fight, there are sacrifices to be made, and we never want our family to be one of them. Has he become in a better place with that, do you think?
come in a better place, meaning is he like at a better place with his family?
Yeah, just in terms of forgiveness and being able to accept the fact that it's necessary, whether we want to do it or not, and don't mean to, we have to.
Yeah, I think I think that he's in a good place with his family now. I think it was definitely hard on them, as you see in the
Yeah.
movie,
Oh, yeah.
and you can see some of the tensions rise with kids and his wife, who both understand the importance of what Paul is doing, but also miss miss him in their lives. His I think he was fortunate enough. He's told me many times he was fortunate enough that his kids were almost completely out of the house when he started these cases, um, which helps. He's like, I don't know, I would not have been able to do this while I was also coaching their soccer games when they were 10 years old. You know what I mean? Like he just flat out was like, I couldn't have done it. Um, but that said, it was still very hard, and I think especially hard on his wife Jackie, who he was on the road so much. Those lawyers were living out of hotel rooms, traveling all around the country all the time. And so I have a great sympathy for her, and um, but they're doing much better now that
Yes.
things have calmed down.
You betcha. In fact, he makes a very powerful statement when he says, I'm going to introduce them to the misery that they caused.
Sure.
Yeah, I also hear him talk about doubting the impact that he has. And so that was my big question was, does he know the impact that he really has had upon not only the case and the people involved, but the bigger picture as it relates to opioid addiction in general?
I think it depends on the day that you ask him that. I think he goes. My experience with Paul is he goes back and forth to think about what impact he has. But that gets at the heart of what I feel like the movie is for me, is this exploration of what it looks like to try to achieve justice in America and within our system of justice. So, how much can one person do to take on these big corporations and to take on these giant wrongs that you see happening in your own community, and what sacrifices do you need to make in order to do that? And I think you know the movie resonates probably more now with me in that way than it did 6 months ago, knowing where we are in the world and seeing a lot of people's uh, civil rights be tested, and corporate America be given more and more leeway. So I think that the people need to find a way to understand what it takes to actually get some of that power back. And I think Paul's a representation of that.
Would it be fair to ask the question, do you think that Clay understands the actual impact that he himself and his project will have for generations to come by choosing to put a spotlight on this?
I don't know if I personally know what impact I will have with this movie. I hope that it has a legacy of making people think about these big things. That's all I can do is hope people watch it. I hope it makes them think about that. but I can't control any of that either. You know what I mean?
I totally
Uh,
understand it. I do. I get it. Now, if you were to ask me, the film reviewer in me would say this of the bitter pill. Most people, the generic explanation of this is that we see the story of Paul Farrell Jr. and he takes on large corporate entities who are responsible for, in large part, opioid addiction. And it centers, of course, around West Virginia. To me personally, I think this is a threefold story. It's a story of family and the sacrifices that are made to be the bigger person and to make a difference and to save lives. That's one element. The other is
mhm,
the actual degree to which society will go not only to hide things and protect things, but also to make sure that there is a wrong and a right in society. And a lot of times it's not righted, which is wrong. And then the third element to this follows us along a story of a breaking society in West Virginia that is desperate for money, that is desperate for help, and is desperate to save lives. That's my take, but I'm not the creator. So I'm going to ask Clay in 2 sentences to tell everyone what the bitter pill is to him.
oh, well, I mean, two senses. That's hard. Um,
Yes, it
I think,
is.
yeah, I think it's an exploration of what it takes for one person to try to make a big difference in the justice system in America.
Absolutely. You betcha.
Um, yeah, I'll just interject and say that your second point there, I think is well stated, and it made me think of like I'll add an addendum to it of sort of uh, capitalism versus public health, which I think also in our country is something that is a hot topic and needs to be looked at, where you're giving for-profit companies the ability to forego what's in the best public health interest of our citizens.
You betcha. I also don't want to forget to ask this question. In the movie, we actually hear from a government representative in West Virginia that talks about needing money, needing resources. Can we as folks help that situation? Can we do anything?
I mean, I think that what you can, it always starts at a local and grassroots level. So you can, West Virginia needs help for sure, but I think that it's about talking to your own city councils, city governments, county commissions, and being like, where were we a part of any of these billions of dollars of opioid settlements? What money are we getting? And where can those resources go to actually help this problem? You know, like I don't want it to go to fill potholes. I want it to go to have extra beds at recovery centers. I want it to go to possibly extra Narcan or getting mental health services for people that are coming out of rehab. Like these are the resources that I think every community should be asking their representatives where that money is being spent.
Absolutely. As far as upcoming projects, I know that you spoke about the Andy Kaufman film, which I know is coming. Buffalo Bills, safety. What's going on with that story?
That's right. Damar Hamlin. Well, the Damar's season just ended a couple weeks ago
Yep.
in the AFC Championship game. So we were waiting to see how his season played out, and he had a great season. And
Wow.
I'm in the middle of editing that one right now. And Andy
Okay.
Kaufman is done, and hopefully should be finding a way to premiere here sometime this year.
That's awesome. And then the Bitter Pill, of course, I know you said it's done its festival run, so you'll be at some point announcing, of course, when people can actually watch this online and stream it.
That's right. As soon as I know, I'll post it to all my social media if I'm on it.
Look at that. Yeah. If it's that week where he's like, oh, I guess I'll go and post for a few days and then go off again. So, to you folks that may not recognize this wonderful man, his name is Clay. Last name is Tweel, Tweel. And let me just make sure I have all your spots right. I have IMDb, Instagram, YouTube. The main site is Clay, Tweel.com. Any other place where folks can find you?
No, that is it.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Clay, thank you so much for this. Let me just
Of
stop this.
course.
Do.